It's turned out to be a bit of a busy week in free agency for the Miami Dolphins. Their latest signing is reported to be defensive lineman Calais Campbell. Who is he? How can he help? All of that here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Tip of the cap to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. And it's been a week. It's the second week in June, and we're getting quarterback contracts. We're getting free agent signings. I was prepared to do a whole show that was not related at all to Calais Campbell, but the Calais Campbell news drops last night. And this was one that some within kind of the content creators and media around the Dolphins, be it Omar Kelly or Joe Rose, some of these guys have been calling for Calais Campbell as a fit to the Dolphins, and I personally am a huge fan of this fit for Miami. Who is Calais Campbell? I think the first thing you note here if you're watching on YouTube, or the title if you're listening to the podcast, is he's listed as I have him listed as a defensive lineman. Because, hear me out. If you wanted to play him on the edge, he did that last season. If you wanted to play him inside, he did that predominantly in Baltimore. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But first of all, who is Calais Campbell? He will be 38 years old on September 1st. So he is a long-in-the-tooth savvy vet. He played his college ball at the University of Miami from 05 to 07 was when he logged his playing time. He had 19 and a half career sacks and 39 tackles for loss during his career with the University of Miami. He was drafted 50th overall in the 2008 NFL draft after coming at the combine at 6'7" 3/4, 290 pounds, ran a 5-second flat 40-yard dash when he came out with 35 3/4 inch arms. So rarefied air as far as like the stature of Calais Campbell. And he had himself a nice career in Arizona. But when Calais Campbell really took the leap was when he left and went to Jacksonville. That's where you saw Calais Campbell and the intersection of his experience with the talent around them and the style of defense that they played. He went on to log big-time numbers in Jacksonville, averaged over 10 sacks per season across 3 seasons in Jacksonville. Now, this is a 6-time Pro Bowler. This is a 2-time All-Pro or 1-time All-Pro player, 2019 Walter Payton Man of the Year in the NFL, the Hall of Fame's all 2010s team. He has 105 career sacks that he's been credited with, and he last made the Pro Bowl with Baltimore in 2020. He played 2 more seasons in Baltimore in 2021 and 2022, and then played this past season in Atlanta in 2023, which he posted 6.5 sacks while playing the most snaps that he has played in a season since 2019, his last year with Jacksonville. Played 712 total snaps. Last time he bested that was 818 in 2019. So this is a guy who, even at 37 years old last year, played a lot, was graded quite well. He was graded very favorably in a lot of metrics as a run defender, but he was somebody who obviously has the triple-digit career sack mark to his name. You kind of have a certain expectation of what he can provide you, depending you can move him around in different spots. And that's kind of where you get into what's really interesting and intriguing about Calais Campbell. But it's probably pretty cool for him. I'd imagine we'll hear from him sometime in the not too distant future about coming back to where his outside of prep career started playing at the University of Miami, now coming back to play for the Dolphins. Every Dolphins fan, you mentioned the name Calais Campbell, and the first thing that comes to their mind is the hit on Ryan Tannehill, right? That was that 2016 playoff run that the Dolphins had where they went into Pittsburgh in the wild card round after winning 10 games. And they played with Matt Moore at quarterback because Tannehill got hit low on the knee and missed the rest of the regular season. And then the following season was completely derailed and turned into a Jay Cutler experience and Brock Osweiler experience because Tannehill opted not for surgery on the knee at the time, and then he goes down in training camp. So just about any Dolphins fan will tell you, well, Calais owes us for the Tannehill. And obviously the game's a little more complicated than that. But here's hoping you can get some good karma on the other side of Calais Campbell in what was his last year in Arizona before leaving for Jacksonville, delivering that low hit on Ryan Tannehill that ruined 2 years, really, of Dolphins football in 16 and 17 as far as the big picture outlook and what your hopes and aspirations were for Miami. But Calais Campbell being added to the ranks, we've alluded to the saying on this show many times, expectations minus reality equals disappointment. I have a very difficult time feeling as though we're going to be disappointed by an addition of this caliber because of all of the different ways that I anticipate Calais Campbell is going to have opportunities to be a solid contributor. Now, again, he's a 38-year-old vet, signing a one-year deal. Don't sit here and expect 25 sacks. Don't expect him to break the sack record. That's really not the name of the game at this stage in his career. But this is how you complement and continue to compete as you make transitions and you transition through a winning window. And you had a Shaq Barrett contract that's a one-year deal. Calais Campbell, we don't know the terms of this contract yet, but it's a one-year contract. Like this week alone in the post-June 1st money, Calais Campbell was a primary starter for the Falcons last year. Marcus May was a primary starter for the New Orleans Saints. You signed two starters from other teams from last year to be rotational role players on your roster. How can you be mad about it? But where can he impact Miami? That's what we're going to get into next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Make sure that you stick with us. Passion, drive, and patience are not just the formula for winning championships. And here's to the Florida Panthers wrapping up a championship this weekend in Edmonton after a Game 3 win against the Edmonton Oilers. But passion, drive, and patience is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit available only to U.S. customers. Where can Calais Campbell impact the Dolphins? Here's why I like this signing so much. If you rang me up and you said, Kyle, we got a game next Sunday. We got to get ready to play with the guys that we got. You're not going to have Jalen Phillips. You're not going to have Bradley Chubb. And who knows, you've heard some rumblings of good things for one or both of those guys, but the realistic outcomes include not having both at the start of the regular season. But if we had to play a game next Sunday, say, get the guys ready to go. I'd look at the depth chart and I'd say, okay, I got Shaq Barrett. I got a rookie in Chop Robinson. I got a rookie in Muhammad Kamara. We got, is Quentin Bell going to be ready to go as our fourth edge and play meaningful defensive snaps? Is Cameron Good recovered from his own knee injury at the end of the year? I wouldn't really like what we have for the fourth guy. Well, enter Calais Campbell, who last year for the Falcons, while playing the most snaps of any season since 2019. Took a significant amount of his snaps as a defensive lineman. He took 447 out of 712 snaps lined up outside of offensive tackles last year. And another 164 were taken lined up in some capacity, lined up over top of a tackle, whether that's inside shade, outside shade, head up. So you're talking 600 snaps, some alignment in shade over a tackle or further outside, the defensive end. 600 snaps last year, 37 years old. Rated as an elite run defender, logged a grand total of 42 pressures, 6.5 sacks. You can roll with that, right? It's certainly a higher floor and the experience to be rotational, whether he's the third guy or the second guy or the first guy or the fourth guy, like however you want to break it down. Say, if we got to play a game next Sunday and get ready to go, there you go. You can do it. You can play on the edge. He can help you with rotational depth. And, oh, by the way, he played with Anthony Weaver for 2 seasons in Baltimore, overlapped in 2021 and 2022. Healthy connections here. But then you also look at the depth chart defensively, and we've been talking about it for months now, and say, hey, Christian Wilkins left. Brought on all these guys. They signed Marcus May and cut Davion Nixon already. You got Tier Tart. It's intriguing. Can you keep the fire lit underneath of him for a whole season? They got Benito Jones, a little bit of a big-bodied space eater nose tackle type. I think Jonathan Harris, maybe an early down run defender with heavy hands and good length. Neville Gallimore, undersized penetration type player. Might be a little tough to consistently keep all those guys on the field in the right situations to maximize all of their impact. That's a lot of personnel management. Life might be a little easier if you got another guy who could be a versatile type defender inside. Calais Campbell can do that because Calais Campbell, his 2 previous seasons in Baltimore, before this past season in Atlanta, played 53 and 60% of his snaps respectively in 2021 and 2022. 53 and 60% of his snaps were taken in the A and B gaps for the Ravens while playing with Anthony Weaver. So you got a guy who last season showcased he can still play on the edge and be an elite run defender and have solid pass rush productivity. And within the past 3 years, he has 2 years playing with your now defensive coordinator, taking more than half of his snaps in each of those seasons in the A gap, which is between the center and the guard, and in the B gap, which is between the guard and the tackle. He's an interior defensive line. Like, he can play both. This is 2 birds with 1 stone type of addition for the Dolphins. And because there's familiarity with Anthony Weaver, you're a little less concerned about the onboarding process and him signing in mid-June. He'll be here for all of training camp regardless. He's really just missed some OTAs and mini camps as far as install goes. You feel pretty good that he can play in the A gap. He played almost 100 snaps in the A gap in 2021 in this scheme, in what you expect to be some similarity of the scheme. He played 276 snaps as a B gap defender, exclusively B gap defender in 2022. And then he played almost 600 snaps outside the offensive tackle or over top of the offensive tackle in 2023. You've alleviated both of your biggest pressure points on the defensive personnel depth chart after you added Marcus May to be the third safety earlier this week. Both of those stressors are gone with 1 signing for a guy who realistically, he's averaging about 625 snaps a season in the last 3 years. And he played the most last year at 37. So I understand he's 38 years old and How much can you really rely on them? Well, they're talking about already being a very heavy rotational type of team up front, and the impact's been there. And he can play all up and down your front. So if you need him to play outside in the short term, you lean on the other young guys early inside. And then when your outside guys get healthy or as they get healthy, you can kind of wean Calais in and play him inside. He's not going to be a nose tackle for you, no. But this addition for Miami checks the two biggest concerns that I had on the defensive depth chart after you added Marcus May. You did it in one shot. And that, for me, is worth whatever they're going to end up paying Calais Campbell, which I would expect is going to be fairly competitive. I don't think this is going to be, per se, a 1 year, a Jordan Poyer deal, right? I cannot imagine that this ends up being a 1 year, $2 million deal. Calais, he most recently played for the Atlanta Falcons and earned $7 million in cash last season after playing for $6.5 million in cash in 2022. Knowing what we know about how Miami's kind of been handling some of their salary cap stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if he got somewhere in the same strike zone of $5 to $7 million. Shaq Barrett got 9, but that was a 1 year deal, and then they pushed stuff out with void years. Could they potentially do something similar? Would not be surprised. It's kind of where my expectation is for a contract for Calais Campbell. Now, his expected impact, we're going to look a little bit more at that here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Make sure that you stick with us. I found myself asking, what's the best personnel combination that I could foresee the Dolphins fielding with Calais Campbell as a part of the mix? And I think what I've decided upon, and this is where it gets really fascinating to try to mix and match the personnel, is you've got a lot of guys, explosive edge guys, who have experience lining up on interior gaps. Right? Jalen Phillips has lined up a lot in his early career as a pass rusher on interior gaps. Zach Sealer obviously can move around and is capable of rushing outside of tackles. In 2022, he played almost 350 snaps. Well, I guess if you include the outside of offensive tackle snaps, he played over 450 snaps over top of tackles or outside. Calais Campbell, we just went through as a litany of alignment possibilities. Bradley Chubb can move around. Shaq Barrett, probably a little bit more of a predominant outside guy at this stage in his career. Chop Robinson, some of his best stuff at Penn State was the reps where he's walked up and coming on interior gaps. I think that's the part that having another chess piece to move around and continue to have the ambiguity as you try to ascertain where this scheme is going to go. What's it going to look like? How are they going to maximize everybody? Knowing that this is wave after wave of player, if you're going to take all the defensive linemen, the edge guys and the inside guys, or guys that can do both, guys like, to some degree, Zach Sealer, but also Calais Campbell, and obvious passing downs that includes like Jalen Phillips, and that includes Bradley Chubb to some degree, and that includes Chop Robinson. Like, there's a lot of disguisability that you can have in the front. And I think that's where you can kind of get into the Mike McDonald elements of how they ran their system in Baltimore. And I know Leonard Williams, the defensive lineman from Seattle, just made waves this week because he was talking about how I'm learning 6 spots on the defense right now, 6 different positions. And it's because how Mike McDonald was the former Ravens defensive coordinator who Anthony Weaver worked under last year, how he teaches the scheme. It's a little Brian Flores-ish, where you're teaching X's on the chalkboard as compared to you're going to be the 3 technique, and you're going to be the wide 9, and you're going to be a mugged player who's in a 2-point stance lined up in the A gap. And if the center steps away from you, then you're going to go. And if the center steps to you, we're going to run a simulated pressure, and you're going to drop out of there and try and take away hot throwing lanes underneath. It's more, we're teaching you conceptually the entire concept. And then that way, we, on a week-to-week basis, based on how we think they're going to react to our personnel, we're going to be very amorphous with who is aligning where to execute what parts of the assignments for the pressure play or the defensive call that we have. So you're seeing that on the back end with all of the guys who can play inside and outside. Kohu, Needham, Ramsey, Fuller. Who am I forgetting? Surely I'm forgetting somebody. Cam Smith at South Carolina did the same thing. Holland can play low and high. Poyer showed last year he could play at sub-package linebacker because they needed him to in Buffalo. All of those guys, there's an interchangeability element that allows you to disguise your intent and put your players in where you expect is going to be the position to have the highest impact on attacking the football. I think you can compartmentalize the back end from the front end, but this is another example of you're seeing the same principle and the same ideology manifesting with all of the types of players that they are collecting to do it. And now it's up to the staff to get those guys up to speed with how they're going to do it. And those guys, it's up to the staff to get those guys out on the field and confident in their assignments so that they can play fast. I'm fired up about this signing. And I know I'm not expecting to play 700 snaps for the Dolphins this year. I don't think you need him to. I think you realistically need him maybe between 500 and 600 this year. Depending on what the recovery timeline is for your edge guys for early in the year. It's a good addition. It is a really good addition for what has been a really good player for a really long time and has elite experience, elite length. He still has power. I watched him on tape. I watched 4 games from last year in the past 12 hours since the signing was announced. It's up at 4 a.m., cutting up clips from the Bears game in week 17, and he's running a hump move on Tevin Jenkins. He's running a cross face of Nate Davis in the low red zone on a read action, playing the backfield and chasing Justin Fields down from behind. He's converting speed to power with a long arm against the left tackle and collapsing the pocket for a quarterback hit. It's all still there. And that was week 17. That was late in the year, and it was snowing outside. I was looking at those awful camera angles for the All-22 at Soldier Field. Late in the year, playing at a high level. I have no reason to think he can't come in here and play at a high level for the Miami Dolphins as well. And that's why I'm so fired up. That's going to do it for us here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I am out of here. Fins up.